I'm saying 80, that's 81,000. What is it? 2 acres. I see 1.2. This is ridiculous. I see that. Where's the buffer?
I'll bring it. Yeah.
Buffer.
I'll bring it. So it's up to you.
Okay.
I think it's
Thanks.
pretty crazy. I mean, it's not super uncommon. Those. So.
I would understand. I mean, you got industrial. This is all industrial. This is what, this is farm.
Okay.
Yeah. This is it.
Sleep maybe?
He said it would be like that. I'll start checking.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know. Give it any thought or, yeah. Wouldn't ask. Give it some. Maybe get input on it, make it speak later.
On something.
Certainly within the power. Yeah. Authority of the organization. Right. Right.
Okay.
No, they wouldn't have to prove it, but whether just or just maybe everybody's had an opinion. You could certainly take that if you wanted it. You guys ready?
I call to order the October 23rd, 2024 Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting. First item on the agenda is the roll call.
Stephen Clevenger,
Present.
Gary Schroeder. Present. Tim Van de Plaats.
Present.
Robert Novak.
Present.
Brad Halberg.
Present.
Ed Butt.
Present.
Rabita Rajkanikar. Quorum present.
Hey, thank you. First item is approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the August 28th, 2024 ABZA public hearing as submitted. I second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business.
The petitioner for BZA 2175, David Chambers, has withdrawn their case. All other cases are set to move forward. The second item of new business, well, bring that up here on the screen. So this is regarding termination of a special exception. This is a function which the UZO mentions briefly in Chapter 644J. Special exception may be terminated by the ABZA if it finds a failure to comply with the terms of this ordinance or to conditions or commitments attached to its approval. An application to terminate may be filed by an interested person or a staff member or an administrative officer. The ABZA may take this action only at a public hearing, having given notice of that hearing to the property owner. As far as we're aware, the request to terminate a special exception has not occurred, at least in recent history. Within the past few years, this board and APC staff have all heard numerous complaints regarding the operation of previously approved special exceptions of varying uses. Violations were either not found or were corrected immediately upon owner notification of said violation. In other words, terminating an SE has not been necessary. However, since the UZO does provide this pathway, staff determined an application should be available if and when the time comes. Our intent for this first discussion is to determine what that process might look like and what information is integral to an application to terminate. A sample application form with the instructions has been provided here for a starting point. And I should note that the bylaws do not include any form for termination. An amendment to the bylaws would not be necessary unless this board feels that it's necessary to include this form with the other forms that are listed therein. So you do have a sample of that application in front of you. As I said, the UZO does allow anybody to fill out this application. It would be on the onus, I think, of the applicant to provide reasons for that termination. But I kind of wanted to open it up to discussion, see what the board thinks about this.
Okay. Eric, you have any comments first?
Yeah, I just make some preliminary comments. A person, let's say that somebody was aggrieved and had filed a letter a year ago before even this discussion was raised. The UZO would require that you deal with that. And so I believe that it's smart to have a form because then everybody's going to be on the same basis. They understand in advance what it is expected of them on this form. And so I think it's a very good idea. The term interested persons. So an interested person is anyone under our bylaws who are owners of property located adjacent to and directly across the street, alley, railroad right of way, plus those within 100 feet of the property contained in the petition. So as we sit right now, this could be filed by a member of the staff or any interested or administrative officer or any interested person as that is defined. So I think it's a good thing to have a form that lays out what needs to be done. It's got a procedure laid out, and I don't know that there's any need for speed here, is there?
No.
So input from the APC would certainly be fine if you felt the need for it, or you can go ahead and pass it now. There's no requirement that you give notice to the world. If it needed to be adjusted, you could do so. So I think you're free to do as you wish on this specific thing.
We haven't also mentioned anything about a filing fee. I'm not sure what that would look like. The filing fee for a special exception is $500. Variances are $100 for residential, $500 for anything that's not residential.
Yeah.
So that's the range for current BZA filing fees.
And so maybe that's a reason to have APC ordinance at least look at it. You are not required to do that. You're not asking for their permission. You folks make your own rules, recalling that you're a quasi judicial body. The APC is a whole different critter, but they do have some expertise and may have thoughts. That would be completely up to you whether you would want them to look at it.
It would also give, I guess, an opportunity for the public to weigh in on it.
Yes.
Because this is not a public forum on, I mean, it's not we hear cases, but we don't really take input on a forum like this.
And I think that's a very good point. You're a quasi judicial body. As you know, that means there should be no contact with these members outside of a hearing. And so I've never heard of this body taking public comment on anything. I'm not sure what our history would show, but it's for a very good reason. Because if this body chose to take public comment on any subject and the person that was giving the public comment strayed into a matter of hearing that you might hear, you got a problem. And so to me, you shouldn't invite a problem like that, inadvertent problem that would come up because of what somebody might start talking about. It's better than somebody talking to you in the grocery store, because that absolutely is the worst thing that could happen. It's like a judge listening to somebody in the grocery store plead their case when it's not in the court, the other party's not present. It is a big no-no for a very good reason in terms of dispensing equal justice to anyone before you. So my belief would be if you wanted to hear public input, one way to do that is to say, hey, we'd like the ordinance committee. I think that'd be the appropriate body, or the exec, or the full APC, but that'd be your choice. To say, we'd like to have you take a look at it and give us your thoughts. Again, you don't need their permission, but it would be a forum for the public to be able to come forward and say, I've got a comment on that, if the committee chose to take public comment.
I mean, this is the first time I think any of us have seen this.
Correct.
I don't think we're ready to take action on it tonight, I mean, that's at least my opinion. It would be, I mean, I'm open for having the ordinance committee, look at it if that's what the rest of the board wants to do. And that way we can weigh in on it too and read the whole thing, even though it's not too long. I mean, I've come up with a couple of questions just sitting up here. For instance, posting the sign. I mean, you can't post a sign on somebody else's property.
Right,
Now,
right.
how-
I think it would be on the petitioner's
It'd be on
property.
petitioner's property. Well, if that petitioner's property is not, is behind the other property, it kind
Right.
of makes things awkward.
The sign would reference a case number,
Right.
which they could then call our office and find out what it's about. And that's really the intent of a sign. The other question would be about notification. I think the UZO only says that proper notice has to be given to the property owner, but do they have to mail letters to all the rest of the interested parties? It doesn't say that you have to, but maybe we want to think about that.
Good question.
That's a good question. Now, also, I know if if something is denied, that you have to currently wait a whole year to bring it up again unless it's significantly, would that apply? to
That's
this?
only
And
for rezones.
That's only for reasons.
There is no,
There's nothing for
nope.
special exception.
They could apply the very next day if they wanted to.
Okay. I guess I'd like to hear from others if you have any opinions or what you would like to, how'd you like to proceed? Gary?
Just to make it easy for you, I'll move that we refer to this to the ordinance committee for their input and consideration and maybe have a public hearing like you suggested.
Do I have a second? Do
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have any further comments on the motion then?
Other than continue on to have a public hearing, give
Right.
input, maybe have Eric, staff look at that and kind of deal with those issues that you brought up, Steve. And I don't think we're in a hurry to do it. So maybe if we take a little bit of time, we'll try to get it close to right the first time.
And I'm assuming though, it would not require a public notice to approve this. This is like our bylaws. So that, I mean, our next meeting is actually after the ordinance committee meeting. So we
Right.
could actually pass it
Sure,
at the next meeting.
sure. Yeah.
So
We
it's
stick it
up
in new
to-
business here. I think for ordinance committee, it could go under a similar heading.
And so it's, for those board members, it's the first Wednesday of the month. The exec starts at 4:30 and then I believe is it here or is it in the county office? It's
That should
county
be
office
back-
building because
yeah.
voting's done.
Right.
So any further comment? We have a motion. I'll call the question. All in favor of referring this to the ordinance committee? I'm assuming it would be on the December. Agenda,
First Wednesday in December,
or, wait.
December?
or no,
Or no, I
November,
guess we
sorry.
have it first Wednesday in November.
November,
I'm
yes.
getting,
Yes,
yeah, we
sorry.
could go on the first Wednesday in November if we have an ordinance, planning to have an ordinance committee. I mean, we don't have a meeting until the following, so it
December.
could be the December meeting too.
Could
depending
be
on-
December, yeah. Right.
To either meeting, I don't know if, Gary, you made the motion, if you have a feeling for that.
No, I just don't think there's a hurry. I think we just send it there and actually that meeting in December,
Right.
ordinance meets just before BZA. So it might be an opportunity for everybody to have input there. If they
We
want.
could wait.
And for,
put it
and for
on.
BZA members to show up early if they
Right.
can
Right.
and listen and have any feedback too.
That might be easiest to put it on the
That might be
December
easier to put it on the
ordinance.
December
Sure.
ordinance committee meeting.
Well, I'd rather have that. You're saying not put it on the agenda till December. I'd rather discuss it in November at the ordinance committee.
Oh, okay.
And then that'll give us another meeting in December to maybe have it pretty much finalized by then. Take any other input.
Then
May
that's
not-
true because then we could make,
Right.
staff
Right.
could make changes before
Right.
December.
Sure.
Have the
Okay.
Final.
But we wouldn't hear it until that first Wednesday in November. And
That's the next meeting,
because that's
right?
our next meeting.
Yes.
I will call the question. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
One more comment. It's
Sure.
a question for Eric, and I kind of agree with that. I think he read the definition of an interested party, which would be staff, an AO, or somebody that's defined as an interested party, which would be a neighbor. So you couldn't get somebody from across town or another state that just disagrees with a particular use. And we may have had that in that the dog case where it was somebody from another county that was complaining because he just disagreed with the use. So, but that is correct. My understanding is correct on that, Eric.
Yes,
It
sir.
would just
That's
be
correct.
Someone defined. Okay, very good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is defined. I do have questions, but I can, bring them up later. Okay. We're finished with our new business. So I'll go ahead and take the public hearing motion, please.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the unified zoning ordinance, the unified subdivision ordinance, the comprehensive plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendation on the applications to be heard this evening and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I would briefly like to describe our procedures for this evening. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We'll ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we'll ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, you will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. In the absence of 4 votes, either for or against, the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. If you're not the petitioner, we do have a sign-in sheet right up here in the corner by staff that we ask you to sign in after you speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And I would like to, before we hear the first current case, I would like to say that if you're here for BZA 2175, David Chambers, and that was a transient guest house on, I think it's Houston Road. That is, or has been withdrawn and will not be heard. So with that in mind, I will hear the first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2174 Madeline Romeo. Petitioner, with consent of the owner McAllister Realty LLC, is requesting the following variances for a proposed building addition in an I3 zone. 1, to decrease the amount of parking spaces from the minimum required 20 spaces for the addition to 0 parking spaces, UZO 2-23-11, and number 2, to reduce the minimum vegetation coverage from the required 20% to 2%, UZO 2-23-6. The 9.377 acre tract is located north of State Route 38 East, just east of I-65 interchange at 500 Hine Drive in Dayton, Sheffield 5, Southeast 22-3, amended on 10/8/24.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We'll hear from staff, please.
Evening, everybody. Nathan McBurnett, APC staff. We're out here on the westernmost extent of Dayton. The subject property, I don't know if you can see it on your screen here. It's kind of fuzzy. It's technically exists today, according to our records, as a parcel within a larger one lot subdivision. So the commercial subdivision extends around to most of that other I3 zoned area, just to the east of the Dayton right of way right there. We've got an R1A zone subdivision further there to the east, and then the rest of the property surrounding is used commercially or industrially. Over the past 10 years, this site has developed pretty quickly. The facility on the computer's now working. The property on the facility on the site in question is part of a larger sort of complex that is used by McAllister Realty. So there's multiple facilities that extend beyond just the subject site here that relate to the site's use. As I mentioned, the strip of land there to the west is a piece of right of way that was dedicated to the town of Dayton in 1997. It's planned to extend north to County Road 200 South, but no development has occurred yet. Thanks. Here's a closer up of this site there. The use that we have classified according to a 2010 BZA report that dealt with one of the same variances, almost exactly the same case, is SIC 735, which is a miscellaneous equipment rental. As I mentioned in the staff report, this is a use that is not well categorized by the UZO currently. The parking group that's assigned to this use is parking group 18, which is based on gross floor area of the facility. But the use of the actual use, the number of people that are attracted, whether they be customers or workers at the site that are attracted to the use, has nothing to do with the facility size. Most of the facility is used for maintenance or as a wash bay. So the proposed expansion, the 7,800 square feet, although it adds a significant portion of the building, is not really going to add any additional traffic to the facility. So moving into variance 1 here to reduce the parking. As I mentioned, in 2010, we came across almost exactly the same situation where the facility was trying to expand, and McAllister Realty was trying to reduce the parking that they actually already had on site, so they had more room for the equipment rental storage that's done outside. Right now, if the facility were expanded as planned, 20 additional parking spaces would need to be added to the site, which, based on our understanding of this use, is not necessary. No additional traffic is going to be attracted to the site from this expansion, which is why they're requesting that the parking allowance is reduced to 0 specifically for that expansion, not for the entire use. So with that in mind, and following the recommendation of staff in 2010, we recommend approval for this variance, given that the UZO doesn't well categorize this use, and suggest that the UZO actually be amended to better reflect how this type of use operates. Moving on to variance 2 here. So when we were first, this case came across our table when we were trying to review it for an ILP, and we noticed that the green space on the existing site is about 2% of the entire site, which is 18% less than what's required by the ordinance. In 2010, in that same staff report that I mentioned, there was an outstanding zoning violation for the green space coverage on this site. And we have no record in our office that indicates that zoning violation was ever remedied. It seemed to be kind of an outstanding question. And so part of it may be that the site that we're seeing here, the smaller portion of the larger subdivision, at one time, when that site expanded to the larger subdivision, which happened after 2010, most of that surrounding land was green space. So that may have very well been their attempt to remedy the green space issue. But since we're looking at only the 9.377 acre portion of that larger subdivision now, we're only looking at the green space of that portion. And since there's no indication that the zoning violation was ever remedied, staff is not recommending approval for this, specifically because there's no hardship that's been able to be identified. If such a large amount of outdoor equipment storage is needed, the site either needs to be expanded to provide area for the required green space coverage, or another site needs to be selected to accommodate the expanding operations. It's been 14 years since that zoning violation, and from what we've seen from historic aerials, no site conditions have not significantly changed. And so one possible remedy that we suggest is just by dissolving that parcel, making it part of the larger subdivision lot. Ownership would apparently need to be combined because it looks like they're not owned under the same entity. It would bring the site closer to conformance. It'd be about 0.5% under the green space coverage required, as opposed to 18% under. And there'd be, it'd just have to replace about 6,000 square feet of the lot with green space, as opposed to 81,000 square feet, which is what would be required for the remedy now. So just to review, for variance 1, staff is recommending approval, and for variance 2, staff is recommending denial.
Thank you, Nathan. A petitioner or petitioner's representative?
Hi, Dylan Reynolds with Tippecanoe, the civil engineer on the project. I am not Madeline Romeo. I'm filling in for her today. Yeah, I think Nathan did a good job kind of describing the scope of the project. It's a 7,800 square foot addition with some concrete pavement kind of in areas that are already gravel and hard surface at this point. Obviously, the parking variance is recommended for approval, so not too many responses there. So we thank you for that. And I do have a representative from McAllister with me today to just talk maybe a little more about the green space requirement, kind of the hardships they face now with operations and the property to the north, and what kind of denying this variance might mean for their facility. So
Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much. I think for us, I think
Name and address.
Brett Rowland, McAllister Equipment, Carmel, Indiana, that's where I'm from. I think right now, I think the key would be to defer the variance. Right now, we're having to provide access to the parcel to the north through the property because the Yost Road extension has never occurred in 14 years. So if you looked at the property to the north, which we do own, the access, the way the building's situated, is the curb cut's supposed to be off the Yost Road expansion. But right now, they're accessing that site. So that's a hardship for us at this point. Yes, they are owned by McAllister, 2 separate business units. I can't combine the lot because it's feasible. One of these businesses could shut down, be sold. We could sell the parcel. So if we do that, one's a small rental store, small rental equipment. This is what we call a heavy store. Every piece of equipment at the heavy is very, very large equipment. It's used for highway work. It's not what you see in neighborhoods, big sites, graders, excavators. So you can see the access point right through the middle of the site. So we lose access through there for the tractor trailers that have to get to the north to supply that lot. 2 different distinct building operations. So unfortunately, I can't speak to what happened. I've been at McAllister for 18 months. I haven't received a violation notice. I didn't know there was a violation. When we first met with Mr. McBurnett, we didn't even know there was an issue with the landscaping. So I want to defer it because I'd like to solve the issue with staff because I don't want to circumvent what we have to do. I just don't think we can do that currently with what's happening with the Yost Drive expansion.
So are you wanting to continue this till our?
Well, I'd
December
like to
meeting?
vote on variance one. Right now, what's happening is we filed all the permits to do
Okay.
the 7,800 and they combined and so we're being held up. I want to solve the problem, but I can't solve it until we can access the other site through, because I can't put a buffer straight across the back because I have to access it through. And I've got to add almost 2 more acres on a 10-acre lot, which is a substantial amount on a 2-acre lot. So it would be easier for me to say, yes, we'll combine the parcels. I give you another 6,000 feet, right? Because that's absolutely easiest for me. But it's 2 separate entities.
Just to be clear, if variance number 2 is approved, the situation would be remedied because you would have a variance approval for green space at 2%.
Understood.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what I'd like to do, because again, I didn't know there was an issue until we filed it. I would like to sit down with staff and have a conversation about a way we could rectify this. But ultimately, I need to build that expansion. So I'm going to have to resolve it some way.
Does just approving variance 1 allow for the improvement location permit to the expansion, or would it have to have both of them approved before? I'm just curious if we vote on one and continue the other, if that solves his issue, or.
I think that would be up to building commission if they issued the permit or not.
I think what Amanda was trying to say is maybe just vote on both of them.
I think that's what Amanda
Yeah, if
was saying,
it's
is if we
approved,
vote.
then it's problem solved.
Then
If
your problem is solved. Yeah.
it's denied, the parking is approved and you can deal with the other one later, but we're here
Mm.
on the agenda. We have a
Right.
ballot, so I would,
I don't want to circumvent the issue. Okay, so I just want to make
But
that.
you're- I mean,
But I can honestly say in all the building files I have, I don't even have the original notification that was in violation. So my first question is, do we not, I mean, people change within this board, within the city, the staff. And for 14 years, we never get another violation. So if I wouldn't have filed a building permit, we would have all just not known we were in violation.
yeah, but if you're
Yeah.
approved tonight, you're not in violation.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Right. And if you're denied, you can then discuss it with the
Yep.
staff and then.
Perfect.
Define.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to make my,
that.
okay, perfect.
And in the back, we'll hear from you in a minute.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and hear both of them, is my understanding.
Can I ask one question? If we vote on both, I think I caught this earlier, there's not like a waiting period if,
You know right away if they are approved. And
I meant
then-
like for a refile or,
Oh, right. So if
Yeah.
they were denied, you could refile the
Okay.
very next day.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? And sir, if you could, I don't remember your name, if you could go ahead and sign in since you're.
Mike Harris, 6912 State Road 38 East. My property abuts to McAllister. I don't know if maybe I can clear some things up for you or not, because I was on the town council, Dayton Town Council, when they expanded north. As far as the green space, I don't know where you're wanting to put green space in a construction area. But I think, I'm not sure, when we decided the hill where all the green space is that separates the R1 from them was our requirement, that we allowed them to put that hill in there and plant all the trees. And they've done a pretty good job. That was part of the deal, to maintain that hill, keep it mowed and everything. So that might be the green space area that the 2%, the 20% that we allowed them to do instead of in the middle. Doesn't make much sense to put green space in the middle, all that crap, the heavy equipment. They've been good neighbors. I've got no problem with what they want to do. It's just, I think they're good on their green space. Because
Okay.
there's no reason to have green space in the middle of construction equipment. And if one individual in the town of Dayton wouldn't have messed up the Yost Road project, they would probably be able to use it next year, but that's the way it goes.
Can you sign in, please? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition?
Evening. My name's Steve Shuley. I live at 7315 Wesleyan Drive in Dayton. I have no issues with the parking side of this thing at all. I mean, obviously, it's a big parking lot to begin with. But I do have issue with the idea of eliminating down to 2% green space. I'm currently sitting on the town council of Dayton, and I've had residents talk to me about dust issues and things from that lot. I think they did a really good job along the hill. That's a great looking spot. I'd love to see them do something along the western side of their property as well. And where the percentage comes from doesn't really matter to us or me. But I think there needs to be more green space done on the property. And as Mike has said, McAllister's has been a really good neighbor to most of the folks in the area, and they've been a great addition to the community. But there's a rule for a reason. There's an ordinance for a reason. And obviously, if they've been out of compliance for almost 10 years, I don't know that the reward for that should be, we just do away with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? And do you have a chance, the petitioner has a chance to rebut?
Yeah, just a couple responses, kind of in response to this gentleman's concerns. This project would, as proposed, would not add green space. I think that's clear from the reason we're here. But as far as dust control, there is a pretty good portion of area that's being changed from gravel to concrete. So, like I said, not adding green space, but that's a factor in eliminating dust, is going from gravel to concrete. And as far as the green space on the west side, I think we've talked about that's where the future road is planned. So just being town owned right away immediately to our west, just not able to add that there. So just a couple quick responses for consideration.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
For petitioner,
Okay. But Robert?
I know where you guys are located at. When they talk about the hill, could you point out or when they were saying about they did a nice job with the hill?
Yeah, it's on the far east side, if you can point to the buffer yard.
I can't point, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I don't have the point, that
Is-
kind of a,
Does anybody have a
You
screen?
show it on this, just
Yeah.
point a pen at it or whatever,
Between the
your
residential.
finger at it.
Between this site and.
Okay. So then, for the very reason that you can't combine the two parcels, even though right now it has the same name on it, it's two separate companies. What you're doing is you're asking to use your neighbor's green space to qualify your spot. Because there again, it may be sold, it may go out of business, something else may happen. So if you don't want to join the two spaces together, you're requesting that you use the green space of your neighbor for your lot.
I guess we're not specifically requesting that, but yeah, I mean, if you look at like you said, different business and same owner, different entities for kind of these 3 or 4 lots that make up the one big development. If you look at all those parcels as a whole, it's like 19.5% green space instead of 20. So we're, a rounding error at that point. It's just the formality of this piece of the property, of the larger piece, is its own separate parcel. So when you look at it parcel by parcel, we're under that 20%. But if you look at that whole McAllister development as a whole, it's 19.5. So if you could look at it as a whole, I think either our ask is for 0.5% relief, or I don't want to speak for Brett, but we could probably find 6,000 square feet.
And all I have to do is clear that through ownership? But
If you could come up to the mic so you're recorded, please. And state your name again.
Brett Rowland, McAllister. They are separate specifically for the intent that if one of the businesses does go under or closes or we sell it, but that's why they're separate entities. They are two different business types. It is all Caterpillar, one's small equipment, one's heavy equipment. So with that said, if I can go back, and that's why I wanted to, if it gets rejected, we'll refile and I'll go to staff and I'll go to Chris McAllister and see if we can combine the lots and then provide 6,000 square feet, because, you know, that's tiny for the whole 19 acres.
A question, if Yost Road was built, does that free up space that could be green space then?
Yeah, we could then go through the back portion and put some green space between the two parcels. Right now, we're having to use it because we lose a big portion down through the front.
Mm-hmm.
So through the entranceway, that roadway has to stay open for tractor trailers.
Gary, you had questions?
Well, as I look at this, I think you pointed it out, but on our map, it looks like the hashed area is a buffer yard that was probably put in on the whole site, and that'll remain buffer yard. So that is committed to green space. And it does seem, I understand the large parcel, and it looks like they did meet the requirement until they maybe divided those off into business units. But as an industrial site, that's not very large, and the way they're using it, it looks like it does meet their highest and best use, even though their green space isn't attached. There's green space in the area and it's not going to go away. So I think I could support their reduction in green space.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We got a ballot, or it's actually two ballots.
All right, variance 1, 6 ballots cast, all 6 in favor. Variance 2, 6 ballots cast, 5 in favor, 1 against.
The both variances have been approved. And we'll hear the next case, please.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2176 Peninsula Point Flats LLC. Petitioner and owner represented by Ryan Munden of RTS Law Firm is requesting the following variances for a proposed multifamily subdivision in an R3 zone. Number 1, to reduce the parking standard from the minimum 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit or 378 spaces to 1.75 parking spaces per dwelling unit or 331 spaces. UZO 2-8-11. Number 2, to allow required parking within the 60-foot setback, front setback from Veterans Memorial Parkway West. This same request has been approved in BZA 2111, but an updated site plan requires it to be reheard. UZO 4-6-14. And 3, to decrease the floodplain zone boundary setback from the required 25 feet to 15 feet. UZO 4-3-3B. The 10.4 acre site is located at the southeast corner of US 231 South and Veterans Memorial Parkway West, across from Southern Winds Apartments in WIA 7 Northwest 22-4.
Second. Motion and a second. We'll hear from staff, please.
All right, Amanda Esposito, APC staff. So we are here on the south side of Lafayette, just south of Veterans Memorial and east of 231. If this site looks familiar, yes, that's because we heard a variance that was approved last year, BZA 2111. They are requesting, I believe it underwent an ownership change, and they have a redesigned site layout and are requesting some new variances here, as well as a similar variance about the parking in the front setback. So the site is undeveloped. It is undergoing a subdivision action currently. The preliminary plans were, I believe, filed just recently. So that's as far as they have gotten with the subdivision action. Across the road is another multifamily development to the north. To the west is undeveloped or farmed land. You see the site layout here. I didn't include any pictures because it's undeveloped. There's not much to look at. The access is from Veterans Memorial Parkway. And because it is classified as a primary arterial, it has a very large setback from it, that 60-foot setback from the right-of-way line along Veterans Memorial. And the UZO does not currently allow parking, any parking of any kind within that front setback. So that is the request number 2 on the variance requests here. Variance number 1 is regarding a reduction in parking, which staff has always supported in the past, especially for multifamily. There is a city bus stop not too far away from here, and we have largely trusted developers in determining how much parking is necessary for them to rent out their apartments. So we are able to approve or recommend approval for variance number 1, reducing the parking spaces. But however, regarding variance request number 2 and number 3, because it is undergoing a subdivision action at this time, they could revise the site plan so that they don't have parking within the front setback along Veterans Memorial. While it wouldn't impact the adjacent properties in any way, there's no hardship posed for them to do that. Variance number 3 is regarding a reduced setback from the floodplain. That one as well, we are not able to support because, variance, the floodplain, where was my note on that one? Sorry, when they have multiple variances, it gets a little complicated. Okay. We believe that granting a reduced setback from a floodplain will be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. This setback is intended to offer additional protection to the residents living in the proposed structure. Now, the soil in this area is highly erodible. That's what being floodplain ground means. So wanting to reduce that setback and place a structure or anything in that area, we believe would cause harm. And again, there is no hardship because they can redevelop the site without losing too much of their buildable area to meet that setback. So again, variance number 1 for reduced parking, we are recommending approval. Variance number 2 for parking within the front setback, and variance number 3, reduced floodplain setback, we are both recommending denial for.
Thank you. I do have one quick question before we get started.
Sure.
When we hear a variance, it says to allow required parking within the 60-foot setback. Is there a reason why we don't specify like a reduced limit as opposed to allowing complete coverage
Yes.
in that 60-foot?
Because the ordinance actually states there shall be no parking within the front setback. So there's no reduction. It doesn't say it shall be set back 60 feet. It just shall not be within that 60 feet. So they're asking for a variance from that allowance.
Okay. I understand it might be easier to look at or to be able to place limits on if the board does approve it. If, for instance, they said 25 feet rather than to completely eliminate it.
And I
That might
believe
be
they
them-
did offer, they are actually showing how close to that road right away they're getting, so they can probably address that,
Yep.
yeah,
That sounds great. I'll ask for a petitioner, please.
thank you.
Ryan with RTS Law here on behalf of the petitioner, and to address that point specifically, we are limited by our site plan. So the site plan shows where the parking will be. So although it's a request to park within the setback, we're showing how close to the property line we're going to be. So with respect to the first variance for reduced parking, we concur with staff's report and recommendation with respect to all the ballot items. Incorporate those comments here, won't repeat what's already been said. With respect to the second variance for parking within the front setback, we concur with staff's report with respect to ballot items 1 through 3. However, we would disagree with the remaining items. As mentioned in BZA 2111, this variance was previously approved and the BZA found that those ballot items were satisfied. That request included a site plan that showed parking within 5 feet of the property line. Our current site plan shows parking at 20 feet from the property line. So we're actually requesting less relief than was previously approved. That shift has then triggered the third variance that we'll talk about here in a minute. But the reason simple shifts of the building and the parking lot aren't so simple is because there is a sanitary sewer that runs through the middle of the property. So that has to be accounted for. That's the burden, which isn't self-imposed. And as I mentioned, the relief we're requesting now is actually less than was previously approved. With respect to the third variance for the floodplain setback, we concur with staff's report as to ballot items 1 and 3. We disagree with the remaining items. What makes this situation unique is that the proposed structures are 8 feet above the floodplain elevation, both at the 25-foot required setback and at the 15-foot that's proposed. So moving the structures further away does not actually accomplish anything because we're still at 8 feet above flood elevation. I've passed around an additional exhibit which shows the buildings that encroach the 25-foot setback. As you can see, it's a slight encroachment by one of the apartment buildings, and the maintenance building encroaches. So given the very slight encroachment by one of the occupied buildings, and then the other building not being occupied, we don't believe that the concerns regarding safety of residents is really present here. And finally, with respect to the minimum relief requested, again, there's the practical impact. There is none. At 25 feet versus 15 feet, we're still at the 8 feet. And given the sanitary sewer and the unique shape of the lot, readjusting things is not as simple as you might think. I mean, it quite literally is a peninsula point flats. So with that, we would respectfully request your approval, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to support the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition? Questions, comments from the board, and I'd like to thank you for your explanation, thorough explanation. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, we've got 3 ballots.
You got it. All right, variance number 1, we have 6 ballots and all 6 are in favor. Variance number 2. We have 6 ballots and 5 are in favor and 1 is against. And variance number 3. We have 6 ballots, 4 in favor and 2 against.
All 3 variances are approved. And we'll hear our last case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2177, Scott and Callie Brown. Petitioners and owners are requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house for a maximum of 6 guests in a single-family dwelling operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. The R2U zoned property is the west half of Lot 71 in the Taylor, Hannah, Harder, and Stockwell edition, more commonly known as 1107 North Street, Lafayette, Fairfield 28, Southwest 23-4, with conditions and commitments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll hear from staff, please.
As you can see here, this lot is in a purely residential neighborhood. Most of the homes here are zoned urban zone with either R2 or R3. You can see the narrow width of the lot with the garage in the back that was built in the last few years, the one-car garage. This here shows the outside area activities. And this is the aerial of the front of the structure. The structure on the right is the one we were talking about. And a white and blue one, or white and gray. There's another picture. And the two-story garage there is the rear of the lot. With, you'll see there's a little driveway behind the white garage door. I believe this is another picture of their alley. All right. Site in question is zoned R2U, single and two family residential. The city of Lafayette recently passed a prohibition on the Airbnbs in the R1U or in the single family zoning, but this can still move forward because it is in the R2U zoning. This is a two-story house or this two-story one family house is located on site as new two-story single car garage was built with access to the alley in the rear of the property. Petitioner explained to staff that guests would be allowed to park in the one-car garage on site for an extra fee. Other guests would need to park on the street as there's no additional parking on site. Petitioners have been using this property as a full-time rental for the past 5 years and would like to convert it to a transient guest house. The house has a 3-bedroom and 2-bathroom, making adequate for up to 6 guests. That request is similar to most of the other requests that have been approved, which are normally two persons per bedroom. Petitioners would not be changing the existing lighting on site. They would have one site or one parking site on site available to them. Petitioners would stipulate that there are no parties in this residence and that large gatherings on site or no parties or large gatherings on site, and quiet hours would be limited from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. As you can see here, the staff is recommending favor as this aligns with most of the other Airbnbs in Lafayette. We're recommending approval with a condition to operate the transient guest house must be attained from the administrative office in the city of Lafayette prior to operation, which is the city engineer. And then with a commitment that the house may only be reserved for a single booking at a time, which means that the house is booked as a whole. You can't book one bedroom to different parties, which petitioner has not indicated that he's interested in. I don't believe that we've had any of those particular requests in the city. And then the petitioner is also proposing 2 additional commitments, which is outdoor noise shall be limited, again, from 7 to 11 p.m. and that there shall be no parties. And that's it.
Thank you, Larry. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Scott Brown at 1222 King Street. I had submitted a letter. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to review that or if I should read that.
We have it in the packet.
We have it in the packet.
Okay. So that was it's pretty self-explanatory. I bought this about 10 years ago, complete remodel as my primary residence. Life changed. Again, King Street is just 5 minutes from this property. We've successfully rented it out for the past 5 years to full-time tenants. Tried to release it again. For this coming year didn't have the quality of the applicants that I typically get. And so we said, let's just give it a shot to try to Airbnb it. We've had some really good success on our Airbnb on Franklin Street. By doing this, we actually plan on to make multiple improvements, such as painting the outside. You can see it's not the prettiest looking house right now. So we actually have a home stager who's helping us with designs and paint colors and Sean Lutz is going to help us do some trim over the windows. So the hope is that this will generate more money and then we'll make those improvements prior to an Airbnb, but if it was a full-time rental, we probably would not be making those improvements.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? In opposition to the petition? Comments, questions from the board? Gary?
I guess, we have added that Mr. Brown indicated that they've owned that and they're going to continue to own it and operate it. And we've added a condition in the past. And I'm not sure what everyone thinks about that. So I'll go ahead and make the motion and see if everybody agrees that add the commitment that if approved, the special exception would cease to be valid if the ownership changed or the owner is not the manager of the property.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Does petitioner, do you have any comments on that condition?
No, I'm fine with that.
You're fine with that? Hearing no comments or questions, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So that has been added.
I will comment on that, even though it's approved. My thought is that obviously Mr. Brown's been in the business, knows how to manage. And I didn't, what you could have a case where someone gets it approved and they decide they want out. Now you have someone in the business that's not necessarily has the experience and it won't be managed in a manner that would be acceptable to the neighborhood. So that's kind of my reason for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
Yeah.
Six ballots cast, all six in favor.
That special exception has been granted. Administrative matters.
There are none.
Unless any member has the objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board, be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. I'll take the last motion, please.
I move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. One more meeting for the year.
Yeah, that's right. Good meeting.
Yeah.
So Steve, when
Thanks,
the hearing on this particular document?
What's going on?